Hello, dear students. I welcome you for this next practical of the subject Vermi Technology. I am Assistant Professor Amol Handore, working at Department of Zoology, KTHM College, Nasik. So today's topic of discussion will be we are going to study the com- uh, comparative physicochemical analysis of the vermicompost. So we will see how the vermicompost is a better fertilizer than the other type of fertilizers. So the objective for today's lecture will be to study the nutritive value of the vermicompost. Secondly, we will study the comparative account of vermicompost quality according to the earthworm species which is used for the vermicompost production. Next, we will see the comparison between vermicompost and farmyard manure. And finally, we will understand the differences between other fertilizers and vermicompost. So let us begin with today's topic. So the first topic that is nutritive value of the vermicompost. After so much efforts, we are producing this vermicompost, and the ultimate aim doing this exercise that we get a valuable product which will add the minerals and nutrients to the soil, and this will ultimately help us to get the more production of the crops. So once your vermicompost is harvested, you have to take some care so that the nutritive value of the vermicompost is maintained. First of all, this harvested vermicompost should be stored in dark, cool places. Okay, so if we do store it in a dark, cool places, the nutritive content of the vermicompost is maintained properly. Secondly, you should have a minimum 40% moisture level in the vermicompost. This is very important to maintain the moisture level. Otherwise, the nutritive quality of the vermicompost will degrade. Now, the sunlight, it should not fall directly on your vermicompost material because due to the sunlight, obviously the moisture content will decrease and it will lead to the decrease in the nutritive quality. Harvested compost material is openly stored rather than it is packed in the bags. Okay, only when you are marketing your product or you are sending it to the suppliers, only that time you will going to pack it into the packets or the appropriate size bags. Now let us see the nutritive value of the vermicompost. First of all, while doing this packaging, this should be done at the time of the selling only. If you are doing or storing this vermicompost in the open place, you have to maintain the moisture level. So sprinkling of the water is very important. You will sprinkle the water over the vermicompost. So at least 40% moisture level will be maintained. Also, if we maintain the moisture level, obviously the microbial population, that means different type of bacteria, fungi, they will grow properly in the vermicompost and they will also be beneficial for the nutritive value of your vermicompost. Now next, whenever you are packaging your material in the bags, you ensure that you will package it into laminated bags for the packaging. uh, by using this type of bag, you can maintain the moisture level after packaging of the material as well. Now, if you do it this practice, your vermicompost can be stored in the bags for a longer duration. So the nutritive quality will be maintained and the moisture content will be maintained to the 40% level. Now let us see what are the different components are present in the vermicompost. First of all, what is vermicompost? It is actually the excretory material of the earthworm. So this excretory material, we know that it is called as vermicast. So it will comprise of the vermicast. It will comprise of different enzymes because it is passed through the digestive system of the earthworm. So there will be different enzymes are present. Then cocoons, because the earthworms are also reproducing in this process of the vermicompost production. So you will find the reproductive stage, that is the cocoon of the earthworm, which will give rise to the new earthworms. You will find different hormones, they are also present in the vermicompost. Then you have different type of minerals, they are present in the abundant amount. And mucus, because since this material will be passed from the digestive tract, the mucus will also be present. Along with that, we will have different micronutrients, antibiotics, macronutrients, and biocides. Okay, so these are very important for the nutritive quality of your vermicompost. So macronutrient, micronutrient, macronutrient, you must be aware that NPK, these are called as a macronutrients. Along with the macronutrients, different micronutrients we will see later. And yes, many vitamins are also produced in the digestive tract. So they are also present in the vermicompost along with the different microbes, because it is nothing but it is passing through digestive tract. So there will be different bacteria, they will be present in the vermicompost. So this is the overall, we can say, the composition of the vermicompost. Now, the microbial population or the bacterial which are present in the vermicompost, they are very essential to be the present in that vermicompost, because they will uh, be adding more nutrients to your vermicompost, and it will increase the quality of your vermicompost. So the fresh earthworm cast, that is the digested material which is coming out of the anal region of the earthworm, it consists of, or it can contain 5 times it is richer in nitrogen and 7 times it is richer in the phosphate. So you can see how much it is richer in the major or macronutrients like N, that is nitrogen, and phosphates. Third macronutrient, that is the potash or K. So it is 11 times richer in potash than the surrounding soil. Okay, so this vermicompost is very much rich than the normal soil. If you see the vermicompost, it looks quite similar to the soil, black loamy soil. But if we compare the nutritive composition, it is very much rich in the macronutrients, that is N, P, and K. Now, vermicompost has less soluble salts and neutral pH. That is very important, that the pH is maintained at the neutrality. So, whenever you are using it as a fertilizer, it will not change the pH of your soil. Yes, another good characteristic of the vermicompost, it has a very good ion exchange capacity, and that will help in the more easy uptake of the nutrients by the plants. Also, it is very much rich in the humic acid and the different type of nitrates. So that will also add up to the quality of your vermicompost. Further, if we see the hormones, so it will basically include different types of hormone like auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, and these are very much essential for the growth of the plants. Now, if we see the nutrient content of the vermicompost, it varies depending on the waste material. That means what waste material you are utilizing for production of the vermicompost. So, suppose if you use only one type of the waste, like kitchen waste, obviously the nutritive composition will be different than if we use multiple sources of the waste. Next, if we see the we use the heterogeneous material, that means organic waste from different sources, the obviously the nutritive quality of that vermicompost will be higher. Yes, so if the waste materials are homogeneous, there are less amount of nutrients. If there are heterogeneous, that means organic waste from different sources is there, it will be very much rich in the different types of macro as well as micronutrients. Now let us see what are the different macronutrients which are present in the vermicompost. So very importantly, it has organic carbon, it has nitrogen, it has phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, and iron. So we know that these are like required by the plants in higher concentration. That's why we call them as macronutrients. So these are present in very good amount, or say in very good concentration in your vermicompost. Organic carbon is very high or very rich in the vermicompost. So you can see as much as 11.6% of the vermicompost is nothing but the organic carbon. Calcium is also very high. You can find around 4.4% of the calcium level in the vermicompost. Now we come to the micronutrients present in the vermicompost. So these micronutrients, what is mean by micronutrient? These are the nutrients which are required in the less concentration by the plants. So plants require micronutrients like manganese, zinc, copper, boron, and molybdenum. So they are required in a nanogram concentrations. So this vermicompost is rich in this micronutrient as well. Yes, in this table, we can summarize the different nutritive components of the vermicompost. So you can see it is very rich in the macronutrients like organic carbon is 11.6, nitrogen is more than 1%, phosphorus is 0.6%, potassium is 0.44%. Similarly, other nutrients like magnesium to manganese, we call them as a micronutrients. So though the value are less, but plants require them in a less quantity only. Now in this slide, we can see the comparison between vermicompost and the simple garden manure or the garden compost. If we see or compare the values in this table, you can see though the carbon content of the garden compost is high, that is 12.2, but other components like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and other micronutrients, they are very much high in your vermicompost. So that is the advantage of using vermicompost over the garden compost, that the required amount of macronutrients as well as micronutrients are provided by this vermicompost. In this table, now we can see depending on the earthworm species which we are utilizing for vermicompost production, we may have the difference in the concentration of the nutrients. So you can see the first table, the parameters are given and you can compare the two species of the earthworm, that is Escherichia foetida and Perionyx excavatus. So if you can see the amount of the organic carbon is produced more by the Perionyx excavatus species of the earthworm, that is 30.31. On the other, also you have the more concentration of phosphate by this species, that is 1.93%. Similarly, if we see the nutrient composition of the vermicompost and vermicast, now we know that the excretory material is come out in the form of pellet, that is called as vermicast. Now once these vermicast, they are broken down, it will give rise to the fine granular material that we call it as vermicompost. So if we compare the nutritive composition, the vermicompost has a pH slightly on a alkaline side, that is 7.7, whereas the vermicast has a pH of around 7. And you can see organic carbon is very high in the vermicast compared to the vermicompost. Similarly, if we see the comparison between vermicompost and vermicast in terms of the micronutrient, you can see the difference in this table. Okay, now we move on to the next slide. Here we can see the comparative account of vermicompost and farmyard manure. So whatever organic waste, we just keep it like that and allow it to degrade. you get what is called as farmyard manure. Here in farmyard manure, we are not using the earthworms. So if we compare the nutritive qualities of the farmyard manure with that of the vermicompost, you can see the vermicompost is superior to the farmyard manure. So you can see the nitrogen concentration is 1.6%, whereas in farmyard manure it is hardly 0.5%. You can see the other nutrients also very significantly. Ferrous level or iron level is 175, whereas it is 146.5 ppm in case of farmyard manure. So if we compare these values, you can make out that vermicompost is superior to the farmyard manure. Now it is a very general practice that we do not use the vermicompost, but we always prefer the chemical fertilizers because they are easily available in the market, but they are not so good for our health of the soil, because as we use these chemical fertilizers, every year we will require more chemical fertilizer to be added. On the other hand, there is no such for the vermicompost. We can use the same quantity of the vermicompost and we will get the good results. So in this table, we can see the comparison between the vermicompost and the other fertilizers. So you can see if we use the different chemical fertilizers, the plants may die due to the overuse of these chemical fertilizers, whereas by using vermicompost, even in higher concentration, there is no chance of the death of plants. Chemical fertilizer make the soil bad, whereas soil condition is maintained, or rather it is improved with the use of vermicompost. Now, even by using these chemical fertilizers, many useful organism or bacteria, they may be killed by these chemical fertilizers, but the concentration, or rather we can say the population of the bacteria, is increased by use of the vermicompost. You must be aware there are some bacteria or microorganisms which are responsible for the nitrogen fixation. So azotobacter, nitrosomonas, nitrococcus, these are the different species of the nitrogen fixing bacteria, and their healthy population will be maintained by using the vermicompost. Even you can have the different problems like leaching of these uh, fertilizers which takes place, but there is no leaching of the chemicals in when you are using the vermicompost. And there are different advantages that your soil quality is maintained properly when you use a vermicompost, and the soil quality degrades when you use the chemical fertilizers. In this picture, or rather table, we can see the comparison between the general compost and the vermicompost. So you can see these vermicompost have very good concentration of the different macro and micronutrients. You can see pH is slightly alkaline for the vermicompost, but other parameters, they are in a very good range. So NPK values are higher compared to the compost. Even the micronutrient concentration is higher. So for example, ferrous or iron, for vermicompost you can find 6,045 milligram per kilogram is obtained from vermicompost, whereas you get hardly 4,467 milligram per kilogram of the common compost. So this table indicates that vermicompost is superior than the general compost. Now in this table, I would like to show you the comparison between the vermicompost and the cow dung compost. In Marathi, we call it as shenkhat. So this cow dung compost is normally very rich, but vermicompost is more superior than the cow dung compost. So you can compare the values in this table that vermicompost has 86.42% of organic matter, which is 81.88 in case of cow dung compost. Water content is high in the vermicompost. Similarly, NPK values are high in case of the vermicompost as compared to the your cow dung manure. That's indicate that vermicompost is superior than cow dung compost as well. In this table, we can see the NPK value of cow dung compost and vermicompost, and it is very clearly indicates that NPK values, which are the macronutrients, they are very rich in the vermicompost as compared to your cow dung compost. That's why vermicompost is superior. So with this, we conclude today's lecture. In today's lecture, we have basically studied the nutritive composition of the vermicompost, how it is made up of the different macronutrients, micronutrients. Not only that, but it also includes different enzymes, hormones, antibiotics, vitamins, biocides. Also, the pH of the soil is maintained, and we have compared the vermicompost with different types of the other compost materials like general compost, farmyard manure, cow dung manure, and after the comparison, it shows that the vermicompost is superior than all other type of the generally available fertilizers. Similarly, we have seen that how vermicompost maintains the soil quality over the chemical fertilizers. On the other hand, chemical fertilizers degrades the soil quality, whereas the vermicompost is very much maintain the soil quality, or rather vermicompost improve the soil quality and texture. So with this, we will conclude today's lecture. Thank you so much.